Hello everybody, this is a sermon that I'm going to give on Palm Sunday 2020 at Cheltenham Network Church, and this, as always, is a recording for if it goes horribly wrong on the day or if you miss the service, and that will be what it's for. So the reading for today is Matthew 21 verses 11, no just kidding, Matthew 21 verses 1 to 11. So I'll read that now and then we'll get into it. When Jesus and his disciples came near Jerusalem, he went to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives and sent two of them on ahead. He told them, "Go into the next village where you will at once find a donkey and her colt. Untie the two donkeys and bring them to me. If anyone asks why you are doing that, just say, 'The Lord needs them.' Right away he will let you have the donkeys." So God's promise came true, just as the prophet had said. "Announce to the people of Jerusalem, your king is coming to you. He is humble and rides on a donkey. He comes on the colt of a donkey." The disciples left and did what Jesus had told them to do. They brought the donkey and its colt and laid some clothes on their backs. Then Jesus got on. Many people spread clothes in the road, while others put down branches which they had cut from trees. Some people walked ahead of Jesus and others followed behind. They were all shouting, "Hooray for the Son of David. God bless the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Hooray for God in heaven above." When Jesus came to Jerusalem, everyone in the city was excited and asked, "Who can this be?" The crowd answered, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." So it was CNC, we showed a load of PowerPoints of pets this week, and it was really good to see them. I think dogs, particularly at the moment, are having the time of their lives with all their humans being at home. The animal theme will continue today as we look at the passage together. Animals, they're not often preached about, play a wide range of roles in the Bible. They are often mentioned as transport, as a means of sacrifice, and I think perhaps most often their mention is used to highlight a particular significance or meaning to an event or to a description. Animals throughout both the Old and New Testament often have symbolic significance. It matters when a specific type of animal is mentioned. And this is very much the case in the reading here as well, where animals are heavily featured. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's not just one, but there is two. Donkeys, a colt, and then just a donkey. And both play a really important role in the story behind the story, the meaning behind the event that is going on. So today, we're going to be thinking about the colt and the donkey, which sounds a lot like a children's book, but very much isn't. So let's set the scene. It's the lead up to the Passover, and so lots of pilgrims from all over Israel are heading to Jerusalem as a place to celebrate, and Jesus and his followers are part of that. It's important to note here, though, that many of the miracles and events of Jesus' ministry, the action and activity that has happened in his life over the last 3 years, didn't happen in Jerusalem. Most of them, a large proportion, happened in Galilee, which is today a 2-hour drive away, so quite a way away. So it's likely that even if rumours and stories of Jesus have spread to Jerusalem, which we know to an extent some had, he wouldn't have been considered as well known in Jerusalem as he was in Galilee. He was much more of an unknown. So people walking with Jesus, getting excited, are more likely to be people from the Galilee crowd and maybe the Bethany crowd as well than those from Jerusalem itself. And we know that, especially from this passage, because when Jesus arrives, the people in Jerusalem are asking, "Who is this guy that gets such an entrance? What is going on?" And the message that Jesus sends to answer that question is actually displayed in the way he makes his entrance. We're back. Got cut off. And what I was talking about was this way that Jesus displays the message of who he is through the colt and the donkey, through the animals. And so we're going to start with the colt. Now, As Matthew references in the text, arriving on a cult is sending a very specific message about who Jesus is. He references an Old Testament prophecy that says the Messiah, the rightful king, will arrive riding on a colt. So the first thing that Jesus is saying with his entrance is, yes, I am the guy. I am the one you've been waiting for. It is me. We are going through the Alpha course at the moment, which is a really good way of exploring life and the Christian faith in a really simple way. And I was reminded as we were looking at the question, we were looking at who is Jesus this week, and I was just reminded of how many Old Testament prophecies there are that are fulfilled by Jesus in his short ministry. Matthew's gospel, because it's particularly was aimed at a Jewish audience, really majors in pointing that out. Jesus totally lines up with the Old Testament prophecies about him. He is the guy. He is the one that they've been waiting for. However, as we learnt in our Palm Sunday drama earlier, which I'll post for you so you can see, people's expectations about what the guy was going to do were quite mixed. But there was one really key one at the time. Israel was a place under occupation by the Romans, and people were really hoping that the Messiah was going to be someone who was going to come and overthrow Roman rule. He was going to liberate Israel from occupation. And some people's expectation was that the Messiah coming would do that in a Game of Thrones style, large, violent invasion. It was quite common for conquerors and kings throughout the Mediterranean world, when they were about to do an invasion, when they were going to take over a territory, they would show up at the capital city, at the city gates with an army. And then the expectation would be that that army would come out and sue for peace and surrender. So you could argue that Jesus turning up at the gates of Jerusalem with a large crowd from the dodgy north of Israel about to enter the city might communicate that message. Was Jesus kind of sending some kind of a message that he was on a takeover? Yes and no. Now this is why our second animal is so important, the donkey. If a military leader turned up to invade a city, they would ride on a horse, and they would use the horse as a way of invading. But if a military leader at the time was going to do civil business, come for a negotiation or come just, to send a message, they would ride a donkey. And it was a way of saying, I'm not here to invade you. I'm coming literally in peace. So Jesus is saying, I am the right leader here with the colt. I'm the one prophesied in the Old Testament. But I'm also the humble leader. I'm here on a donkey. I'm not going to turn up and start a violent war. I'm not going to be this person that you think who does things the way that you think they should be done. He follows through with this when, as he enters the city, he does not head straight for the Roman authorities to take over or to start a fight, but he heads for the temple, which, and this is a bit of a spoiler, he then goes to throw the moneylenders out of. And I think what that says is that Jesus' war, his battle, is not with the current political leaders, but with a whole system and way of seeing God and what God is like. Jesus is the right king, but he's not going to be dictated to about what he's going to do and how he's going to liberate his people. So what does that mean for us? Well, I've been thinking a lot about the theme of rescue at the moment for two reasons. One is basically just the situation we're in. Feels like a time where rescue would be good. But secondly, as we come into Holy Week and the theme of Easter, it always makes me think again about that theme of God's rescue of us. And thinking about rescue has provoked me to ask the question, what kind of rescue are we looking for from God? Because I think in the Palm Sunday story, we are forced to acknowledge the fact that there is a difference between knowing you need rescue and dictating how that rescue should go. Time and time again, Jesus does things differently from the way that people expect. They are right, but often they are different. Jesus is the rescue plan. He's the right rescue plan. But he's going to do rescue in a way that is his way. And it's going to be bloody and status lowering and painful death on a cross, not a great military victory. Because ultimately, humanity doesn't need a great military victory. Humanity needs the cross. Jesus is the rescue plan, but he is the humble rescuer. Now, I'm aware this Easter season is going to feel really different from others as we remember the price that Jesus paid on the cross to rescue us from our fallen human state. We might not feel very rescued. Probably in the same way the crowds waiting to be freed from the Romans didn't immediately feel rescued either. And yet the reality is, for both them and for us, rescue has been offered to us, and it can be a reality in our lives if we want to take up the offer. And so we're going to finish by doing a bit of an exercise, which YouTube friends, I can invite you to join as well if you would like. I want us to take a moment to consider, what do we want to be rescued from? My observation has been that self-isolation can be challenging because it leads to intensity. Whether that is because you're on your own with your thoughts a lot, or whether you're intensely with your family or with flatmates, kind of with a very small group of people for a very long time, it can throw up sides of our personalities that we might not like. For example, I know that I can be quite an impatient person, and I have noticed at this time that I am increasingly more impatient, and I can be quite an anxious person, and I've noticed that I can be really anxious at the moment, and that can kind of throw up bits of my personality that I just don't like. But the good news is, no matter how dark the stuff that isolation is throwing up that we're observing in ourselves, Jesus died for that stuff. It's not counted against us. The Holy Spirit wants to help transform, renew, and rescue us. And so can I encourage you, as we finish, maybe take a few moments as we go into Holy Week and we go into that reminder of the confidence we can have in the cross and in the resurrection of God. Remind ourselves why we need that rescue. And you might want to write down some things that you have noticed that you need rescuing from. Write it down. Keep it private, and then over this next week, give those things to God. It is good sometimes to be reminded, and this sounds really strange to say, but to be reminded that we are broken. Because when we remember that we are broken, that we're not perfect, that we are messed up, and that we do things sometimes to hurt ourselves and hurt others, we can remind ourselves that we have this rescue on offer to us from Jesus, that Jesus died to save us, that he died to rescue us. And then we can take that brokenness and that messiness and that stuff that we need saving from and give that again to God. And that process, I think, can really help remind us of what Easter is really about. We might not get all the Easter eggs that we would want. We might not get that kind of amazing gathered worship experience. We might not get the Good Friday meditation that we find really helpful, or to receive communion in the way that we used to. But we do still have access to that rescue. Jesus still died and rose from the dead. He is still living among us, and we still have the opportunity to receive that. God is still good. Jesus is still the rescuer, and he will complete what he promised to do. Amen.